I don't think the CDC and the NIH realizes what it's done to public perceptions of public health and vaccines in general. They are the number one source of vaccine skepticism and vaccine hesitancy because of the way that they've handled this. And honest questions from parents, or instead of giving them an honest answer, they're just sort of treated as pariahs. They are creating a population of vaccine skeptics across the board now that I don't think they would have imagined in 2019.
No, I would have, years ago, I would have said, listen, the CDC said it. It's right. Likely that's the case. Let's just follow their recommendations.
Absolutely.
They're the experts. I'm not. But watching the lack of common sense being perpetuated by people who are the so-called experts, but also watching the politics involved in policy. I'm sorry, politics involved in medical policy to try and keep us safe. I was like, but what does that have to do?
Right.
If Trump said it's good, now it's bad. If Trump says it's bad, now it's good. And it's just like, either it works or it doesn't.
Yeah, and I don't think that who supports it doesn't determine that.
And then on top of that, we're all stuck at home watching the news. And the news is funded by the very companies that want us to take their product.
No, this is the perennial problem, is that the corporate media absolutely depends upon, I'll just use cliche, big food and big pharma. Without that is like bread and butter, and so the likelihood that you're going to get major exposés of something a pharmaceutical company does from one of these corporate entities, that's what these media companies mostly are, is remote. And then when you realize that in fact the administrative state, so things like the CDC and the FDA, and the entities in the private sector that they regulate, they're not adversaries very often. They're often working together in a kind of massive collusive activity that in some ways makes our situation more complicated now. In the 20th century, you could sort of, as a heuristic, talk about the public sector and the private sector. And there was the Soviet Union and the communists. They wanted to collectivize industry and have the state control all the private sectors. That didn't work. It's a disaster. That's why we won the Cold War. But it's not that simple anymore, because the reality is, there's a private sector and there's a public sector, but very often large, especially multinational corporations, are these kind of weird hybrids with the government regulators. In fact, it's often the same people that go in and out of these jobs.